we breaking that black barrier every single day, every weekend, 24/7. It does not matter.
Tell them what breaking the black barrier mean, man. What they
Come on,
look
man.
like,
What is
man?
black, man?
What is black?
Copper Color Productions, man.
Huh?
The Copper Color King, King Cash, Moors and Money, man. Let's get it.
Black King, stand up for understand what black is. It's the essence, it's the culture. We've been on this earth, you heard? The Bronx was called for Apache. Huh? The Bronx was called for Apache, man. Oh, last breed, bro. We bringing it back, last breed.
Really forever flying in this bitch, man. For the ancestors, baby. For all the ancestors out there, baby.
Yes, sirski. We back with some more, man. It's the Copper Color King. We back in this bad boy with some more good content, man. Ready to explore the world of politics today, man. I ain't gonna lie, they been ripping my boy Donald Trump up. They been tearing my boy up. I ain't even gonna lie. I am not gonna lie. And I'm not gonna get on this microphone and sit here and talk like I'm a big supporter of everything that he has done thus far. Right? All I'm gonna say is I know and I talk about this stuff from a historical point of view. So do your own research before you listen to anything that I may say, anything that I might read from. Subscribe to the Patreon. You can get the links to these articles if you're not the type to go do the research yourself. It's done for you. We really talk about it, bro. I'm not even gonna lie. They've been ripping my boy apart. But we gonna get into it, right? It's a lot of people that's out there right now that's not in support of Project 2025, A lot of people that don't know the true history behind Planned Parenthood, right? And just how all of these things connect, right? Even the Reconstruction era within itself, right? And how the term Black Republican is something that has existed ever since the 1800s. This is why I'm saying we're really going to talk about it. You're really going to talk about it. Do your own research. Whatever you may hear, whatever I might say, take it with a grain of salt. Right? Do your research. But like I said, man, they ripping my boy apart. I don't think it's okay for people to do this. I don't think it's okay for the media to be doing this and for any of this stuff to be happening without people doing their research on the candidates that are currently running for president, right? Or the Democratic candidate that's going to be running for president. People don't know the truth behind this young lady, this woman, Kamala Harris, right? And then there's this whole Planned Parenthood stuff that I told y'all that I was going to talk about in one of my recent videos, right? I'm just going to dial in on it a little bit, just a little bit. And let's remember, this is all liberal. Like, this is all the stuff that the liberals, they like. They love this stuff. They stand for this stuff, right? So the true Americans, right? The folks who know right from wrong and know that there needs to be a change in this country, right? They'll understand. They understand. This information is not for the weak. It is not for the weak. If you got a weak mind, I suggest you turn this video off, man. More or less, though, like I said, we're going to talk about this Planned Parenthood stuff real quick, right? So I was doing my research, and not too long ago, I found this article. And yep, it was fact-checked. I found this article. We're going to read through this article a little bit, and it just talks about how Kamala Harris prosecuted journalists who exposed Planned Parenthood. Right? Planned Parenthood, another liberal agenda, something that's been screwing our country up for a good amount of time now. For a good amount of time, right? I'm a person that's against that stuff 100%. 100%. I'm not going to sit here and lie. Right? They killing off our babies, man. They are killing off our babies. And the proof of this right here lies in these abortion statistics, right? Since 2010, we have had an extreme number of abortions, and as the years dwindled down, all those numbers did was decrease. And as your boy came into office, right, they started to increase all over again. All of this Democratic stuff, whatever they got going on over there in the White House. But let's talk about it. So what does it say? Well, did Kamala Harris prosecute journalists who exposed Planned Parenthood? Let's see. 2 people associated with the Center for Medical Progress entered several meetings with Planned Parenthood and the National Abortion Federation under the false company name Biomax. Right? In 2014 and 2015, 2 people associated with an anti-abortion organization called the Center for Medical Progress, CMP, David Dalydan and Sandra Merrick, posed as fetal researchers for a fake company called Biomax in order to gain entry to a National Abortion Federation's conventions. Right? 2 folks in disguise. Right? They disguised themselves as liberals and got in with them just to expose what was going on at these conventions. Let's see. The pair's goal was to gather evidence that Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers were selling tissue from aborted fetuses for medical research. Ooh, that's nasty, right? This is nasty, right? And to further prove this stuff, why would the founder, Margaret Sanger of Planned Parenthood, issue an apology letter? This is an apology letter, right? Issued an apology letter. right? Margaret Sanger gained a worldwide renown for founding the American birth control movement and later the Planned Parenthood Federation of America. Well, in this document, man, we got an apology letter, right? Sanger and eugenics. Eugenics is the theory that society can be improved through plant breeding for desirable traits. In the early 20th century, eugenics ideas were popular among highly educated, privileged, and mostly white Americans. Margaret Sanger pronounced her belief in alignment with the eugenics movement in her writings, especially in the scientific journal Birth Control Review. Say what? This is the founder of Planned Parenthood. And this is on their website, plannedparenthood.org. You can check it out for yourself. You can see the truth for yourself, right? It is on their website. So again, right, this liberal stuff, we learning that Planned Parenthood is not something that was created for the people. We the people, but not for the people. It's an experiment. It's an experiment, right? I'm going off tonight. I promise you. Like I said, we are going to cook us some fried chicken. Fried chicken. We cooking fried chicken tonight. This is the founder. And now what else they saying, right? They was trying to prove that Planned Parenthood were selling tissue from aborted fetuses for medical research. Why would why would they be issuing apology letters, right? Margaret Sanger being associated with the eugenics movement, right? Experimenting on the fetuses and whatnot. Could this be why? Right? Are they apologizing for doing stuff like that? Right? Check this out. The CMB subsequently posted videos online which they claim document Planned Parenthood officials offering to illegally sell fetal tissue for profit. While Planned Parenthood maintained the videos were deceptively edited and captured only discussion related to legal reimbursements for tissue donation procedures. They tried to deny the fact that they were illegally selling fetal tissue, right? So why would Kamala prosecute them? Let's finish reading. A text meme circulated during the 2020 presidential campaign held that California Attorney General Kamala Harris, who by 2020 was a U.S. Senator and a Democratic vice presidential candidate, had unfairly prosecuted the CMP journalist while taking no action against Planned Parenthood for selling aborted baby parts. They prosecuted the journalist, right? So even if this wasn't true, right, if this was just fake news, right, why would they prosecute the journalist? If it's fake news, there's many other journalism organizations or people, journalists out there that could have been prosecuted for quote unquote putting out fake news, right? Well, why would Kamala prosecute them? Right? Why would Kamala prosecute them? This is in California, right? It's a lot of stuff going on in California that the people that we don't know and that isn't being talked about enough. And this is all of that liberal stuff. This is what the liberals get down with. This is how they shake and bake. So this all brings me back to the overall question, right? Do you know who you're voting for? Do you know who you're voting for, right? Or is everybody just following behind rhetoric, right? Or blasphemy? Stuff that people are just saying just cause. See, the problem here in America, right? I'm gonna make it short and sweet, right? Is that people act too much off of their emotions. There's not enough folks out here who use something that we know and all have, and it's called common sense. Common sense. We have no common sense in this society that we live in. People forget that we live in the age of information. We live in the age of information. So why would you be a follower or be a blind bat or just be blind in general and go for stuff that you do not understand when you could just research it, right? We are in America. This stuff is free. It's free to find this stuff out. Again, why would Kamala prosecute these journalists for putting it out there that Planned Parenthood was basically selling fetal tissues for profit? Again, it brings us back to the apology letter. Right? Sanger was involved in eugenics, right? Sanger was also accused of being a racist. Right? Oh, she was also accused of being a racist, but eugenics played a huge role in the Planned Parenthood Foundation and organization. Right? Check this quote out, right? This is a quote from this article. And it says, well, let's just see first, right? Sanger was aware of concerns partially argued by Marcus Garvey in the 1920s that birth control was a threat to the survival of the black race. You go, Marcus Garvey. One thing that I can agree with. This statement, which acknowledges those fears, is taken from a letter to Clarence J. Gamble, a medical doctor, a champion of the birth control movement. In that letter, Sanger describes her strategy to allay such apprehensions because exterminating the entire population was not a goal. A larger portion of the letter makes Sanger's meaning clear. It seems to me from my experience in North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and Texas that while the colored Negroes have great respect for the white doctors, they can get closer to their own members and more or less lay their own cards on the table. They do not do this with the white people, and if we can train a Negro doctor at the clinic, he can go among them with euthanism and with knowledge, which I believe will have far-reaching results. Going forward with euthanism, what you mean with that? Right? Euthanizing Negro people? Right? And Marcus Garvey accused Planned Parenthood of basically being an organization set out to destroy black people. Right? It could be an organization that's set out to destroy people in general, to depopulate in general. That's just an opinion. But the point is, she was involved in eugenics. And that we all know that that's a racist ideology to begin with. So yeah, more so, like I said, it's a lot going on in California, right? Pay attention to who you vote for. Because what it says, right? People don't even know. And if you don't know about this, because I didn't, I was doing research and stumbled across this and discovered that in California right now, yo, that's crazy. That's crazy. I was completely unaware of that. I had no clue that anything like that was going on. That's crazy. And it's stuff like that. That's what I'm saying. Like, do people know who they are voting for? They don't understand this stuff. It'll go over a lot of folks' heads. It'll go over a lot of people's heads because people are just followers, right? And we're all traumatized, right? We've all been struck by the Democratic propaganda time machine. And what they did is they sent us back in time, back into slavery, and enslaved our mental. Not our physical, but the mental. The Willie Lynch theory, they hit us where it hurt. They hit us right where it hurt. Because now what they doing, they devaluing the man, right? They making the kids, go the other way. Men is like, to be a man is not even a man anymore, right? What my father raised me on, I still got my father, thank God. Thank God. It's not the same as what I see a lot today. Like, I just the other day, one of the OGs, we had a family event, and I asked him like, yo, I asked his daughter like, yo, your son coloring? He gonna say my son ain't coloring. That's for chumps. And even though I don't agree with that, he said he gonna put a ball or something in his hand, a baseball bat, whatever the case may be. I understand your point. I get where you're coming from. We living in an era now where anything can make a child transition, but that's just the fact of what's happening at this current time, right? This is all the stuff that's happening at this current time. So I can't blame him, right? I can't blame him for how he perceives that. You know, we do need a change because there's too much of it going around. But look, in California, there was a child marriage ban, right? A child marriage ban, and it was in opposition from Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood went against a child marriage ban that was proposed in California. Look, California, a solidly Democratic state, was on track to be the first to pass an absolute ban on marriages for children under 18. But the legislative proposal was met with the opposition from liberal organizations like Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood. So let's just do the math, right? Let's do the math. If we have child marriage, they are basically saying that it is okay for an adult male to sexualize a young lady. Now, young lady, that's just like saying rape is okay. Let's just face the facts. That's just like saying rape is okay. And rape is not okay. It was never okay. It's not something that should be done. You know, anybody who thinks like that or who promotes that type of stuff, they need to get packed up. They need to get packed up. I'm not even going to cap. Right, but look, check this out. So I want everybody to understand. You go up in that voting room, right, or that ballot box office in November to place your vote. And the minute you vote for Kamala Harris, right, that's the minute you vote for stuff like child marriage, right, rape. And like I said, what's going to happen is you're going to have more young women being victims of this stuff, and they're going to be aborting these children, right? And who's making more money off of this stuff? Who's making the most bread off of this stuff? Bingo, Planned Parenthood, right? Planned Parenthood, they going to collect the bag. At the end of the day, the back end goes to them. So this organization makes more money off of child marriage. This is why they are against it, right? This is messing up their bread. It's the business side of it, right? They need this stuff so that they can stay in business. It's all a social experiment, right? It's all a social experiment, and it's affecting millions and millions of women across the country. And we're not talking about California alone, right? Who has probably one of the biggest populations in the country, right? Right, and it's tough. It's tough to say this because I got sisters, right? I got sisters, and it bothers me. It hurts my feelings, right? Check this out. Got another one. So we checking out the Kamala Harris and Donald Trump poll update. So what it's saying, Vice President Kamala Harris is making the bid for the White House with running mate Tim Walz after replacing Joe Biden on the Democratic ticket just a few months before Election Day. As Harris closed out the Democratic National Convention last night, a brand new poll shows that it had little impact on voting intention. But as we all heard recently, right, and I was going to vote for the brother. I wasn't going to vote for Trump. I was going to vote for Robert F. Kennedy this year. He dropped out of the race and is endorsing Donald Trump. So now I have no choice but to vote for Donald Trump because I'm not voting for this witch. It's over, right? But anyway, what else? Harris now has a 3.5 lead over Trump in the latest average of national polls. If this is true, and I want y'all to share this video with your friends, family, all that stuff. If this is true, then that means we are in support, right, of Planned Parenthood selling baby parts, right? We are in support of child marriage in California, right? We are in support of all of those disgusting things that's going on in the world right now, in our country right now, as we speak. Share this with all of your family members. They need to understand this stuff, right? Harris has not seen any positive boost from this week's DNC. according to the latest national poll undertaken from August 18th to August 22nd by Our Intelligence. This poll still shows Harris far ahead with a 6-point lead over Trump at a 49.5% of the vote. However, there is no change from the same poll last week. The numbers suggest that in a straight Trump-Harris matchup, both candidates will see a boost, but Trump would close in on Harris' lead at 48% to the vice president's 52%. We may not be far off from this possibility. Sources close to Kennedy Jr.'s campaign are reportedly suggesting that the independent candidate may drop out of the race as soon as today and endorse Donald Trump. Now, that's the most recent news about it, right? Robert F. Kennedy endorsing Donald Trump. A little bit on Robert F. Kennedy. Let's see, because I've been a fan of the brother for some time now, right? Now, he, right, is against the migration, right? All of the migration stuff happening. He is against Planned Parenthood, right? He's against all of the stuff how should I say this? Are conducive to the destruction of our communities, of the black and brown communities, the copper colored communities, right? Look, environmental lawyer, anti-vaccination activist, and a conspiracy theorist. They call him a conspiracy theorist because he's always exposing something. Now, guess what, right? Guess what Donald Trump said he's gonna do, right? For Robert F. Kennedy, because he decided to endorse him. This is the craziest stuff that I've seen, right? He made Robert F. Kennedy responsible. He's responsible. Let's see if we can find something on this, right? I probably spelled that wrong, right? Robert F. Kennedy. Now, he made him responsible for basically leaking the files to JFK's assassination, right? I'm trying to find an article on it. I should have did this right before I actually decided to go live with this, right? But yeah, Donald Trump gave him the green light, right? He gave him the green light. So now, if this is something that is true, right? If this is something that we can't find an article on, so I can give y'all the facts, right? That's going to change American history for the long run. That's going to change American history for the long run. Let me see. Probably spelled it wrong again. Boom, got it. Trump promises to release all JFK assassination files as RFK Jr. endorses him. Now, if this is something that happens, right, people got to understand, if this happens, if he blows the roof on a JFK assassination, this changes American history for years. See, there you go, sis. You're already on it. You see, this is crazy. It'll change American history for years to come, because, right, his assassination it changed the direction of the country, right? JFK had big plans, right? Take the dollar off the gold standard. Not take the dollar off the gold standard, to basically throw the Federal Reserve in a ditch and bury him. He was going to bury him straight up, right? And the mob was against him 100% because he was down to put the mob away, right? 100%. Like, folks wasn't really jacking that. So they planned, well, this is my theory, assassinate JFK. That's what I always said. Put him in the dirt because he's going against our agenda. And Trump said, I promise to release all JFK assassination files. That's going to be crazy. Right? But amidst all of this, right, I want people to understand why I'm going so hard on Kamala Harris and the Democrats, right? Like I said, I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I could care less if we had a president in this country, if anything, right? I would rather we not have one, right? I would rather we be able to govern ourselves and just have some sort of leadership, right? Some sort of sensible leadership. We can't do that until black people stop killing other black people. Until we end the copper-colored on copper-colored violence. I'm doing this so that people could understand, right, where a lot of this stuff is rooted from, right? People always want to talk about pro-black slavery this, pro-black slavery that. Oh, do this for my ancestors, stand up for my ancestors. But do you know what that history actually consists of, right? It brings me back to the Reconstruction era. It's always going to bring me back to the Reconstruction era, because people like to go as far as back as slavery. That's the farthest back some people can only go. They don't know about our true ancestry. They don't know that we got that copper-colored blood. They don't know that we were here first. They don't know a lot of this stuff, right? Most people still believe that we was Africans on a slave trip traveling on these boats 300 deep, packed into tight spaces, as if we would have survived that, knowing that you probably need physical therapy after doing so. You'll need physical therapy today after doing that. Modern technology, modern technology is different. You cramp 300 of us on a boat, none of us are making it out alive. We're going to be weak when we get off, can't walk, legs shaking, all of that. Deprived of every nourishing nutrient in our bodies. Right, but like I said, for the folks who could only go back this far, right, then this ain't to come at anybody, but we talk about the Reconstruction era, right? You see these faces right here. These are the faces of the copper-colored men, right? Even though these are the bourgeoisie, right, the free colored. These were the men that were in power in the late 1800s. These were the big dogs. These black and brown men, right? And basically, like I always say in this series, in these videos, this is why they don't like us. This is where racism stems from. When we want to talk about racism, KKK and propaganda and all of that nonsense, it stems from the simple fact that we're able to amass so much political power in such a short span of time. We were able to accomplish so much in a short span of time, and they put the Democrats in the dirt. They put them in the dirt, buried them, right? Buried them, not in the literal sense, but buried them. It was nothing that they could do to these brothers down south. They controlled the South, right? So for those who don't know, that whole theory that the South has been racist for a long period of time, part of it is true. The other part of it, well, the majority of the population in the South at one point in time composed of copper-colored men and women. And some of these copper-colored brothers, they did have slaves, right? They did own slaves. If you didn't check out my last video, go check it out. But some of them actually built businesses, gave a lot of their quote-unquote slaves and family members jobs. And those people were able to amass some wealth themselves, right? So if you haven't been following the series, we covered 2 chapters of this so far. We also talk about the NAACP, their communistic role, and a whole bunch of stuff, man. We in chapter 3 of the Reconstruction era, 1860 to the 1900s, man. We about to drop a bomb. We about to learn some more about the true history, the true American history, and why I say today people should vote Republican. You know, get up when it's time to vote and go vote for the right wing, right? Go vote Donald Trump, right? Since RFK ain't in it no more. Robert Kennedy Jr. ain't in it no more. Go vote Donald Trump. Right, so let's continue, right? So what does this say? This says these are the first colored senators and representatives in the 41st and 42nd Congress of the United States. The first colored senators. The first colored senators on the 41st and 42nd Congress of the United States. So what we got? Reconstruction witnessed a great contest over the fundamental question of who was entitled to have a voice in the American political process. The destruction of slavery itself opened up a question. Would African Americans newly freed from slavery, some 4 million, be permitted to participate in politics on the same terms as white people? Voting rights for African Americans had the potential to totally upend the Southern political order. Almost 40% of residents of the former Confederate states were black. Told y'all, almost 40%. That's a big population, right? They were black. And in a few states, they constituted a majority or nearly so. Thus, the enfranchisement of black men might usher in an entirely new era of Southern life. The impulse to remake American democracy and voting rights pulled in many directions. Women suffragists stepped forward to argue that the nation should move away from the idea that men alone should wield the vote. Oh yeah, by the way, these brothers right here, right? These brothers right here are responsible for why black women were able to get the chance to vote, right? Brothers like these right here, these bourgeoisie, free-colored, mulatto, copper-colored brothers, right? They are responsible, truly responsible, for women being able to have those rights, right? So let's give an applaud to them, right? Because they gave women some power. They gave them the power that they truly deserved and needed, because that led to them being able to work, and that working, helping their families, being able to provide for their families, putting food in the babies' bellies. Now, think about it like this, right? They gave them that right. And then the Democrats swept in with the welfare program and separated the man from the women, right? Every time they see progress, they just gonna hate. They always gonna hate. I'm telling y'all gotta just make this stuff add up sometimes. Yes, the NAACP has been useless for a very long time. Very, very long time. Listen, if it was a race war going on right now, they the last people I'm gonna call. First person I'm getting is my neighbor. Not even going to sit here and lie. Don't need the NAACP, and we don't need any of these black figures, these LeBron James and Jay-Z's of today's world. We don't need them. But let's continue though, right? Women suffragists stepped forward to argue that the nation should move away from the idea that men alone should wield the vote. Growing concerns among upper-class Americans about an increasingly immigrant-heavy electorate in northern cities likewise shaped a debate about how democratic the nation should become. During Reconstruction, the government remade the country's political system, not once but twice. Few other moments capture the centrality of popular politics to the nation's history and the difficulty of sustaining a broad-based democracy in periods of political and economic strife. Now, you know what this brings us to, right? And we're going to break off from this real quick, right? We're going to step into the Project 2025, right? The Donald Trump Project 2025 mandate, right? So now, in the article, they just mentioned how in the Reconstruction era, the government remade the country's political system, not once, but twice. The 2025 mandate is sort of similar to the Reconstruction era, because this is pretty much remaking the country's political system. Check this out, right? Now, I'm not going to sit here and say I agree with everything that they got up there, because I was speaking with my great lady friend, my great, I won't even say lady friend, my little baby or whatever. We was having a conversation about it, and she sent me a text message, and basically it had a list. It's a post on TikTok or Instagram that Plies made, and in the list it speaks about all of the things that's in Project 2025. And I feel like people didn't really do enough research on some of those things. I'm gonna make a good mention on two of them real quick, right? Now, the very first one that I went into was in the Department of Education, and I'm reading into it, right? And people think the whole idea of the history or black history or just the education system now being taken off the market is a bad idea. I'm actually a huge advocate of it, because what they teach in schools today is not the type of stuff that people or young kids should be hearing, right? All of that stuff about how black people were slaves and Jackie Robinson and Frederick Douglass and all of that, we tired of hearing that. We don't want to hear it no more. And I'm pretty sure the parents today, if they sat in the classroom and listened to what some of these teachers teach, they'll fall asleep. Straight up. Kids falling asleep too. We don't want to hear it no more. Right? But in the Department of Education part, their mission, right? Listen to their mission. Listen to this part. It says federal education policy should be limited, and ultimately the federal Department of Education should be eliminated. Now think about what this, let's break it down, because there's commas in this and all of that, and for the people that's type slow out there, they won't be able to understand. Right? It says the federal education policy should be limited. So we're going to keep the federal education, right? It should be limited, right? Limited. The things you teach should be limited. We're going to put some brakes on that, because y'all teaching some pretty wicked stuff now, especially now. And then it says, and ultimately the federal Department of Education should be eliminated. This is not saying eliminate education. This is just saying eliminate the DOE, because what they teaching is garbage. It's garbage. Right? When power is exercised, it should empower students and families. It should empower, right? Eating healthy, right? Learning trades, right? Making more money. That's how you empower students and families, right? Not government. Stay out of politics. Right? I made mention earlier in the conversation that they got heavily involved in the whole vaccination stuff. Why do you have teachers having say so, or having as much say so to say, yeah, pro-vaccinate, or just having as much power in the DOE in general, not teachers, sorry. The DOE having as much power as they do. Like, your job is to teach kids and shut up at the end of the day. Teach these kids what they supposed to learn and shut up. That's it. Right? Listen to what they say. In our pluralistic society, families and students should be free to choose from a diverse set of school options and learning environments that best fit their needs. How can you not agree with that? Our post-secondary institutions should also reflect such diversity, with room for not only traditional liberal arts colleges and research universities, but also faith-based institutions, career schools, military academics, and lifelong learning programs. I am an advocate for this. 130%. I want my kids under the DOE, under Trump's reign, right? Because this sounds like something that's fun. They want to learn what they want to like. I wish I knew the stuff that I knew now as a teenager, or at least getting into it. But no, I came out of middle school with the same mindset as most of the other kids that were in my classroom. We about to go to high school and learn about the same stuff all over again, just that the papers are longer, the classes are longer, and the teachers are more annoying, because I hated my teachers until I got to satellite. Right? Now that's one part. That's on the DOE. So for anybody that's going to throw shade on the 2025 mandate for how they plan to take away black history and blah, 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 blah. Well, there you go right there, right? Proof is in the pudding that it's not so bad. Just read, right? It won't hurt to read, right? It does not hurt to read. Now the next one, right? The next one. This one, I love this one right here, right now. Off the rip, they said the number one goal for, right, this is for what chapter? Department of Health and Human Services. Protecting life, I think that's consciences and bodily integrity. They should pursue a robust agenda to protect the fundamental right to life, protect conscience rights, and uphold bodily integrity rooted in biological realities, not ideology, right? Get out of here with all of that other stuff. Get out of here with all of that stuff that's like, you know, he, her, how, who, what, when, where, then. Like, because it doesn't make sense. Like, right? Just pack it all up because we don't need it no more. Right? They're being realistic. This is called the Project 2025 Realistic Trump Agenda. Right? The next one after this one is, the third one is promoting stable and flourishing married families. Right? No more separation. No more man versus woman. Right? Families comprised of a married mother, father, and their children are the foundation of a well-ordered nation and healthy society. This does not only apply to white people. Right? This applies to black people as well. Right? What do you want? Right? You got to ask yourself that as a parent. What do you want? Right? What do you want? Ask yourself that question as a parent. Do you want a husband for your children? Or do you want to be a single independent mother raising 6 kids by yourself? This is not to throw a shot. And not to say that some of them don't want husbands. Those just be the ones saying I could do it by myself. No, the fuck you can't. Oh, excuse my French. That got a little sensitive on that one. But nah, it's not possible. Right? There's no family. There's no happy family that was raised without their village. Right? No matter what families may go through, you need that village. And in the society that we live in today, under the organization we have today, over the last couple years, all I've ever seen was man versus woman. There's been about 300 podcasts that came out that talk about men versus women. Women this, to that. Man this, and that. We don't need dating advice. We need a reality check. This is the reality check. That's the truth. This is the truth. Right? Look, unfortunately, family policies and programs under Biden's HHS are fraught with agenda items focusing on LGBTQ equity, subsidizing single motherhood, disincentivizing work, right? What this does is single mothers get the welfare, right? They don't feel like they have to work hard enough, right? They sit back, collect that welfare, the food stamps, they wait for that check every month and go buy liquor. I see it in the hood. I see it in the hood every day. We gonna put them on blast. They be out here getting lit, living on food stamps and cash assistance. It is not okay, and that's just really what you see, especially in New York. It's popping in New York, right? Especially the food stamps, and I love me for some food stamps. With the cash assistance, right? That's the first thing most folks look forward to. Not all. Some really be going into these situations to get out because they really be hustling. But some go into them with that ideology like, yo, I need that cash assistance, that couple dollars. They don't want to work. They become lazy. That does not promote a stable and flourishing family. I don't care what a feminist got to say. Right? Look, and they dropping truth bombs. Check this out. Working fathers are essential to the well-being and development of their children, but the United States is experiencing a crisis of fatherlessness that is ruining our children's future. Stay off TikTok, y'all, because they're gonna put this stuff in it. They're gonna shape it in a bad image. Stay off TikTok. And but follow me on TikTok, Copper Color King. We go crazy. In the overwhelming number of cases, fathers insulate children from physical and sexual abuse, financial difficulty, or poverty. Incarceration, teen pregnancy, right? If they stop in teen pregnancy, that means we don't need Planned Parenthood. They go out of business. Let's do it. Poor educational outcomes, high school failure, and a host of behavioral and psychological problems. By contrast, homes with non-related boyfriends are present among the most dangerous place for a child to be. This is truth. HHS should prioritize married father engagement in its messaging, health, and welfare policies. Going crazy, bro. If you are not supporting Project 2025, then you basically saying you supporting all of this stuff that's happening in the world today. For every illegal immigrant that comes into this country, another child is in danger. I don't care what anybody say, because the ones who want to be legal, I wouldn't consider them illegal, because they're going for citizenship status. But if you choose to remain illegal, or those who are remaining illegal, all of the children are in danger. That's the truth. Close the borders. Close the borders. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not this pro-American, right? I stick to my roots, right? But I just know if the ancestors was alive right now and they seen what was happening and they said like, okay, we gotta pick a side, they're going with Trump. They're going with Trump. They're siding right with him. Right now, let's jump back into the Reconstruction era. Now, like he said, the Reconstruction era, the government remade the country's political system. This mandate is the country's political system. It is now being reconstructed yet again. Yet again. So now, we are now in Reconstruction era 2025. That is Project 2025. Right now, I'm blowing the whistle on this one. Right? All that propaganda that they putting out there, debunk all of that. We now see this from a new perspective. This is the Reconstruction era all over again. So if you cannot advocate for for Project 2025, then that means at the time you would not advocate for these brothers right here. You would side with the Democrats, the rapists, the murderers, the thieves, the KKK, and everything that was set to destroy you. That's the truth. That is the truth. Straight up. Now, going back into it, right? It says, when the Civil War arrived, democracy in the United States was at a fragile point. Since the nation's founding, the question of who would vote had been wholly decentralized. States decided without restriction who was qualified and who was not. In the early 19th century, states moved away from the idea that only male taxpayers or property owners should vote and began to extend the vote to propertyless and working class white men. In part, the shift reflected the changing nature of the 19th century American society. With more people living in cities, property restrictions excluded not just working class men, but even substantial business owners. With increased pressure from disenfranchised white men, right? Yep, because they did have disenfranchised poor white men back then who hated the fact that black people was obtaining some wealth. Right? But you know who hated it the most was the wealthy white men. They hated it. A lot of these disenfranchised white men stood with these black folks during the Reconstruction era. And as we read previously in this book, if you didn't check out my older videos, they created organizations together that were destroyed by democratic propaganda. Because what it did, it scared the white men away from the black men. Right? That's what it did. Scared white people away from black people, right? That whole idea that black men are savages and they rape your white woman or steal your white woman is propaganda. Nothing about it is true. Even the Emmett Till story was told in a false reality, right? But people don't know this. Right? So yeah, with increased pressure from disenfranchised white men, political parties competed to expand the franchise and win their allegiance. Even more significant was the creation of new states out of the former territories. As they fashioned constitutions, many new states not only escaped from the bonds of tradition, but also expanded the franchise as a way of recruiting white men. Through political pressure, party competition, and competition among states, poorer and even propertyless white men gained the right to vote even before widespread industrialization. But expanding the vote to some people often went along with retracting it from others. In the early republic, many states with higher property qualifications had not excluded African Americans from the vote on racial terms. Although few African Americans had the property to qualify, state laws was not explicitly racist. With the expansion of voting rights to propertyless white men in the 1820s and later, however, race emerged as a way of defining some groups as unworthy. Race emerged. So in the 1820s, race emerged as defining, as choosing who was worthy and who was not, right? States like New Jersey, Maryland, Connecticut, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania that had once permitted at least some African American voting now introduced racial exclusions of African Americans as they extended the vote to propertyless white men. Oh, big drop, right? So what they saying is, right, we know you poor white men and you black men were working together. In order for these black folks to for these white folks to be able to vote, these poor white folks, we have to strip the African Americans up from their ability from being able to vote. Yeah, or going back on the welfare stuff, definitely it does perpetuate us. It perpetuates a demonic pattern, if you ask me. It's a demonic pattern because it creates this crazy mentality, right? I've seen and heard the craziest stuff come out of the mouths of some people, and I ain't gonna speak too much on it, but yeah, in order for poor white people to be able to vote, they had to strip it from the black folks, right? New drop, right? We didn't know this about history. All of these states mainly close down south, practically up north, right? Closer to New York, right? Close to here, had some black folks that could vote, but lost their rights to vote because the poor white people got their chance to vote. And what this does is it actually sways the chances of which political party might win the next election, right? If these poor white people were able to vote, whoever granted them the chance to vote were the next, most likely to be the next president. Most likely, because they were going to get most of the votes. Same thing like what we see with these migrants, right? Listen to what I'm saying. Think about these connections. They bring these migrants over here. Give them the right to vote. Give them all of this money, right? Replace the population of the black vote because they know we're not going to vote. A lot of us, I'm going to just say, right? Which sways the direction of which political party might just win. They're repeating this stuff all over again. We are living in the Reconstruction era. I'm telling y'all. It's all facts. Beginning with Ohio in 1803, every state that entered the Union except Maine barred African Americans from voting. Even New York, which did not bar all African Americans, created a high property standard for African Americans, even as it eliminated the standard for white. So in order for you to vote as a black man in New York in the 1820s, you had to have a high property standard, right? You had to be a person with some wealth, some money, right? If you were poor, it's over. In the 1850s, the forces of exclusion seemed to be gaining momentum as immigration from Ireland increased dramatically after 1845, and as industrialization created what seemed to be a permanent working class, growing calls circulated to exclude those not seen as worthy of belonging to the political community. Several states that had once permitted resident non-citizens to vote now specifically required citizenship status and sometimes added a waiting period after naturalization. Connecticut and Massachusetts added literacy and understanding tests to exclude illiterate Irish immigrants. Nationally, the Know Nothing Party emerged as a political force, gaining power in several state governments on a platform to exclude immigrants from the political system, perhaps forever. In this context, voting increasingly was defined not as a right, but a privilege, right? Voting was a privilege once upon a time, right? Not a right. So we got to be grateful that we have the right to vote and not a privilege. Be grateful. One, that only belonged to the responsible members of the political community, right? And it only belonged to the responsible members of the political community. Why is this big drop? Because people say now that our vote doesn't count. Well, if you thought our vote does not count now, imagine living under something like this, right? A situation where the only people who could vote were responsible members of the political community. This is all Democratic propaganda. This is a part of their stuff. This is how they do things, right? More so, government, for the most part at this time, they were trying to put it in a direction to where we would lose all our rights, right? This is why we go into the civil rights movement, right? They've been attempted the civil rights movement before in the 1800s, but due to the Reconstruction era, folks really didn't need to, right? They made a second attempt. The new civil rights movement, the one that we learn about in history class. They don't teach us about the true one, right? They don't teach us about that, but this is why they wanted to remove all rights from black people or colored people, right? Colored people of color, right? Because they're introducing eugenics and racism and all of this stuff. All of this stuff is starting to gain population or a rise in New York. I mean, in New York, and in America, in America, in our country. By comparing immigrant men to all women, excluded everywhere after an early century revision in New Jersey's electoral laws, politicians who supported exclusion emphasized the unmanly nature of some men, their dependence upon their employers, their seemingly subservience to an autocratic Catholic Church, or their alleged lack of mental capacity. Although the Know Nothing Party movement collapsed, it appeared that early momentum to expand the franchise had been reversed or at least stalled. Many Americans believed the exclusionary impulse revealed in the disenfranchisement of black Northerners included European immigrants as well as Chinese immigrants on the West Coast. Right? Big drop. They disenfranchising us and replacing us with European immigrants and Chinese immigrants. That's what we seen, right? The gold rush in California. Now, that's where most of the Chinese immigrants were coming to the Americas. Well, I know black people got rich off that. Right? I never heard of any black folks, and I'm going to do the research, or copper-colored folks getting rich off the gold rush. I've never heard of it. And it's depressing to hear it, for me to say that, because it happened not too long ago. There were black people all over the world at that time. All over our country. They've been. Why there are no black people who got rich off of that? I don't know no black folks who got rich off of that. And if there is any, I need somebody to point me in the right direction, because I don't know nothing about it. Now, more so, let's move forward though. What we got? But the Civil War and Reconstruction created dramatic new openings in the political system. They set the stage for one of the most significant expansions of democracy in the country's history. The march of exclusion not only paused but was overthrown. To some degree, the cause of this reversal must be found in the war itself. From the beginning, the Civil War depended upon the mass enlistment of male volunteers. Immigrants responded in return, often enthusiastically, with German and Irish and Hungarian and other immigrant organized units answering the calls of the nation. Even former know-nothings recognized that the United States needed immigrants, right? Why did we need immigrants, right? To disenfranchise black folks, right? To replace the population, right? This is all of the part of the plan. It's the same stuff happening all over again. Promise y'all. And this time they doing it with a different group of people. Right. Other politicians celebrated the commitment to the nation. These men demonstrated and saw it as proof of their worthiness for the vote. At first, however, such games seemed irrelevant to African Americans. Although Northern African American communities mobilized to support the war and Southern slaves ran to U.S. lines. Whoa, that don't make no sense. Did they skip a page? All right. Although Northern African American communities mobilized to support the war and Southern slaves ran to U.S. lines, the U.S. government excluded African Americans from service in the U.S. Army, again replacing the population. As the nation's need for soldiers grew and as African Americans demonstrated their loyalty to the country, the government began to permit black men enlistment late in the 1862. By the end of the fighting, about 180,000 black men had served in the U.S. Army and 20,000 more in the Navy, with many other African American men and women supporting the war effort as civilians employed by the Army. Although the Army at first paid African Americans unequally, their presence in uniform signaled their potential inclusion in the body politic. A first question was their citizenship status. The Dred Scott case denied that African Americans were citizens of the nation, beginning with the Attorney General Edward Bates' 1862 opinion. However, the Lincoln administration began to act on the presumption that free African Americans were in fact citizens, right? But they're making a claim that only free, the free being the mulattoes, right? The free colored people in power, the black folks in politics. We all know Abe Lincoln was also a copper colored brother, man. We got it from his autobiography. Proof is in the pudding. Check out one of my older videos, right? But being in uniform allowed them to gain access to the political body. It allowed them to become some type of close to political power or obtaining some type of political notoriety. And to do that, it was to be they did that by being enlisted in the war, right? That's some big drop right there too, because most people think that folks did that to obtain free status, but these people were already free. Once they enlisted in the war, they obtained political status. It's a difference. They don't teach us that in history. Yeah, well, the thing about the gold in California, and I got a video that I'm gonna talk about that on very, very much later, though. It has a lot to do with Queen Khalifa, the Black Queen of California, where they get their name from, right? We got a lot of drop with that one. We're gonna talk about it, and it goes all the way back as far as I would say 900 AD. However, though, right, with the emancipation of African Americans who made it to the U.S. lines under confiscation acts passed by Congress in 1861 and 1862, and then the freeing of more than 3 million slaves by the Emancipation Proclamation, growing numbers of African Americans seemed poised to claim citizenship. But such wartime acts required enforcement by the administration. As of the end of battlefield fighting in the spring of 1865, the Dred Scott case had not been overturned. No additional state allowed blacks to vote, nor had any law clearly fixed the status of freed people. Right? So even after Emancipation Proclamation, we still lost our opportunity to vote. There was still no opportunity to vote. We couldn't vote. It was outlawed, right? Outlawed. Now, previously, we got to understand, the best way that they did this is during slavery, they replaced the free colored population, or those who were free got outpopulated by immigrants. People that are not from America, right? Even though they say America was founded by immigrants, right? These folks came in the 1800s, and they became the majority of the vote, as we just learned. And those were the poor white people. The immigrants coming to America were the poor white people. They were the ones coming to America to chase the American dream, right? Manifest destiny. They came without no money. So stretching the vote out to them gave them more power. Thus stripping the vote from us, stripping us from the ability to vote. Right, it's crazy. It's crazy because I can only imagine what may happen once this country becomes overpopulated by immigrants, and what may happen with the whole voting situation, right? Like how we saw with last year, the last election, right? They quote unquote sabotage the ballot boxes so that it could look like Biden got more votes. I can only imagine what might happen this year, though. Let's just see, man. It's crazy. But yeah, as the United States worked with loyalists to establish a new government of Louisiana, members of New Orleans' long-standing free community of color petitioned Abraham Lincoln directly for suffrage in January 1864. Although Lincoln suggested that limited black suffrage be included in the state's new constitution, Louisiana's Constitutional Convention rejected the idea. This setback, however, helped push New Orleans' free people of color, sometimes called gens de couleur. We learned about this word a little bit previously, before, a long time ago. Gens de couleur libres, or Creoles, right? The Creoles, the free people of color in New Orleans, the Creoles, to make common cause with ex-slaves in Louisiana's plantation belt. It was clear that they would not prevail if they attempted to separate their own interests from the interests of those who had only recently become free. Right? So we learning these free people of color, like I said, they were Creoles. These folks were the Creoles. Those Creoles of today, descendants of these free people of color, these mulattoes, these mixed race Aboriginal and Swarthy European peoples, or European peoples, right? They wanted to make common cause with the ex-slaves in Louisiana's plantation belt, right? So they could create these organizations full of black power, so to say, quote unquote. The U.S. Congress also saw a potential opening in Louisiana, as the situation there helped promote congressional Republicans to try to assert control over Reconstruction. Although some Republicans tried to extend the vote to black soldiers, the final bill, known as the Wade-Davis bill, did not include that provision. It did, however, permanently disenfranchise ex-Confederates who held high civil or military offices. Yet President Lincoln vetoed the bill, and so control remained with the president, and through him with the military and the new governments being created on the ground. As the U.S. Army, backed by roughly 180,000 African American soldiers, pushed back the Confederates over the course of 1864. Free people in the North pressed increasingly for suffrage. For decades before war, African Americans had organized in state and national conventions and had lobbied state legislators to grant them the right to participate in the political process. Now, in the National Convention in Syracuse, African Americans called for the vote as both a human right and just a reward for loyal service in the war. They formed an organization called the National Equal Rights League, whose president was John Mercer Langston, then of Philadelphia. The goal was to create branch organizations across the country to pursue shared goals of full citizenship and equal rights for African Americans, folks up in the North. Organizing continued in local areas. For instance, as Tennessee white voters remade their state's constitution, free people in convention there called for enfranchisement as means of protecting their rights. Increasingly, Republicans began to contemplate expanding the vote, something unthinkable even a year or two earlier. In April 1865, in what would be his final speech, Lincoln offered his first public support for extending the voting rights to very intelligent African Americans and those who serve our cause as soldiers. These folks being the free people. Those are the free people, right? These Masons, all of these folks, that's who they are, right? This is the Reconstruction era in a nutshell. All of the stuff that they fighting for, their rights to vote, all of that stuff that they going to war for, the Civil War, obviously, it's not something that was really created or done to like represent poor black people. But what it did was it allowed some people of color to get in positions of power to make room for other black people, right? Like I said, What they did once they obtained their political power was they established businesses and schools and gave their family members jobs. I mean, Louisiana, the South in general, was a hub, right? You could find anything down south created by black people, and some places up north, right? We got the coloring book dropping real soon, you know, the one where we introducing some of the black inventions, right? Things that people don't know, right? It's like the spark plug, something that goes in a car, right? For those who don't know, made by a black man. But yeah, once they obtained their political places of power or pieces of power, you know, they extended it to the families. They extended it to the families, some of them, right? And like we spoke about in the last live stream, you had some who were taking family members out of slavery, straight up out of slavery, right? There's a whole list, and we covered it. There's a whole list of people, right, who took their family members out of slavery. And all of this was happening as these folks, right, that Lincoln just said that he extended the vote to, were obtaining their power, right, their political house seats of power. In 1866, right, we're gonna go through this part. In 1866, black men's enfranchisement emerged as a pivotal issue, perhaps the pivotal issue for Reconstruction policymaking in Washington and politics on the ground in the South. Right? They saying that us having the ability to vote became a pivotal issue, right? With Lincoln's death, the question seemed to pass to his successor, Andrew Johnson, something that was like very terrible for these folks, right? Across the North and in portions of the defeated Confederacy, freed people, including Frederick Douglass and some white Republicans like Charles Sumner and Thaddeus Stevens, pressed Johnson to extend the vote to freedmen. Right now, we got to understand, Johnson wasn't with none of that. Johnson was a slave master. Johnson wanted all black people to remain slaves, right? And he wanted all white folks, right, to be in them places of power. That was it, straight up, right? He was an advocate for these things, right? An advocate for the KKK, a strong advocate. Supreme Court Justice Salmon P. Chase, a longtime anti-slavery attorney and supporter of African American suffrage, saw a chance to persuade Johnson to extend the vote. To convince Johnson, Chase toured Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina and witnessed white Southerners' efforts to rebuild their political power. Right? Efforts to rebuild. They had to rebuild. Why? Because who held the seats? The colored folks. The colored folks held the seats, right? But they hate so much, right? Eugenics, right? They hate so much. They don't want to see us shine. They had to rebuild. They rebuilt in places that we once owned. You got to remember that and understand that, right? A lot of that stuff, all of this white racism that we see or we hear about down south, that stuff is new. They just mad because at any given moment, the minute we decide to wisen up a little bit, right, we could take our land back, right? The minute we learn how money work, right, and how to rebuild our community, they lose everything that they worked hard for. And that's not what we want. We don't want that. We don't want that for them. We want to share the wealth. Let's share it, right? It's enough to go around, right? It's enough to go around. We just want y'all to respect it. That's all. And this is why we can't vote Democrat, because they don't respect it. They do not respect it. What else we got? All right, so yeah. Additionally, and less reliably, Chase became convinced that white Southerners would acquiesce, whatever this may mean, let's figure it out so I ain't left. They would accept black voting, right? He thought they would accept black voting if Johnson acted quickly. Therefore, he wrote letters urging Johnson to this course. For a time, radicals and African Americans held the hope that Johnson might go farther than Lincoln and resolve voting rights once and for all. But in fact, Johnson disappointed them. Beginning in late May 1865, he issued proclamations recognizing state governments, and he allowed those governments to restrict the vote solely to whites eligible under older state constitutions. Mind you, right? The immigrants, the Hungarians and all of that came over here that they replaced the vote with, they're white in the skin, but they are not American. At this time, they are not blood-born Americans, right? They're not native to America. They just replaced the majority, which was the colored folks. That's the majority. Now, all of these Hungarians and all of these folks, right? These are the folks that's coming over here with them theories, those eugenics theories and all of that, right? Because you know what? It lasted up until the 1950s, right? People still run with that stuff today, but it's very rare that you'll meet someone who knows about eugenics that's like a middle-aged white person, right? Unless they're very educated. Their racism just comes from their parents. That's the truth. But yeah, understanding all of this, right? These white folks, they're not even American, right? They are not Americans, right? They're not from this country. So, yeah, they restricted the vote to these people that are not from this country. These people are going to continue to vote, right? Continue to vote for the folks who are providing them with the most help and assets. This is something that's been happening since the 1800s. Same strategies, and just that the only way that you realize it is just that by doing research. That's the only way you could catch on. Right? So, yeah, it says, supporters of black men's enfranchisement realized that they could not rely on the president and that they must work to build popular support. In the South, ex-slaves drew upon their understandings of politics, honed as slaves during their tumultuous debates of the 1850s, and refined during the war itself to fashion increasingly cohesive local political organizations. Rooted in kin groups, churches, and neighborhoods, ex-slaves worked collectively to shape labor arrangements to engage politically. Although many of these initial organizations had intensely local roots, constructed from associations developed in slavery, ex-soldiers, black northerners, and relatively small numbers of radical white northerners helped develop them into broader regional and national organizations. So yeah, we couldn't have done it with our unseasoned brethren, right? They were still involved, can never count them out, right? What is racism when you got folks like this working together? In the South, they made union leagues and loyal leagues, originally founded in the North to support the war effort, into largely African-American political and paramilitary organizations that linked regional networks into statewide and region-wide coalitions. Inspired, but in many ways not governed by their northern predecessors, these union and loyal leagues were located both in large cities like Wilmington and Charleston and Mobile, and in dozens of smaller towns like Company Shops, North Carolina. Over 1865 and 1866, these organizations petitioned state governments for the vote, worked to alter labor relations, and lobbied Congress to include suffrage in the 14th Amendment moving through Congress. The 14th Amendment was designed to resolve numerous problems, among them the fact that emancipation would increase Southern states' representation in Congress after the 1870 census. Since each former slave would now be counted as a person, not as 3/5 of one, and still unresolved problem of African American citizenship. Although Republicans considered some versions of an amendment that would have enfranchised African American men, dispiriting electoral losses in northern state referenda on black voting, especially in Connecticut, led them to choose language that penalized states that withheld the vote from black men but did not affirmatively require that states allow black men to vote. See, some shaky stuff going on, and this is why you needed the Reconstruction era. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Right, so you got some Republicans, they going half and half on it, right? Some considering amendment that would enfranchise African American men, But these northern folks, right? These northern folks swayed them in a different direction. Some of them. Right? But it was still penalizing folks, right? That was withholding the vote from black men. They playing with our ability to be able to choose and pick for ourselves. And that's what we see happening right now. Right? That's the crazy part too, because what do you see today? They play with our ability to be able to choose for ourselves. So much propaganda, so much stuff going on. You don't know what to do. You don't know what to choose. Right? You don't know what to choose. You don't know what to pick. Right? Let's move forward. We're going to push to the next page. Instead, Republicans won a crushing victory in the fall elections. Right? Oh, hold on. Passed in June 1866, the 14th Amendment was not ratified until July 1868. During the summer of 1866, prospects for black men enfranchisement seemed dim. President Johnson fiercely opposed it, and the 14th Amendment did not demand it. Everything turned on the fall 1866 midterm elections in the North. Had Johnson's allies won, black men's enfranchisement might have never happened, a turning point in history. Had we not won the midterm elections, right? Had we not won, well, how not copper-colored people played a role in winning the midterm 1866 elections, right? Or the 14th Amendment, right? That would have changed history, right? There would have been no enfranchisement after all. There would have been no Reconstruction era. Let's remember, Johnson is a Democrat. Andrew Johnson is a Democrat. Right? He's a Democrat. Let's continue. Instead, Republicans won a crushing victory in the fall elections. Although some northern voters had rejected state-level referenda on black men's enfranchisement, they were disillusioned with Johnson's lenient policies toward the ex-Confederate states. With the winds of popular opinion at their back, Republicans returned to Washington for a short session in December 1866. Supporters of black men's enfranchisement in the North and South flooded Congress with letters and petitions. Right? Reconstruction era. They're going crazy for their rights. In the military Reconstruction Acts, congressional Republicans ordered the Army to register both black and white male citizens, but not some high-ranking Confederates, to vote for new state constitutions, right? Kick these racist folks up out of here. Right? At the conventions in almost all of the former rebel states, free people and their white allies wrote biracial suffrage into new law. With the question of voting in the air, some states, especially those with relatively large white unionist populations, also excluded some Confederates from the vote. Although African American politicians generally supported allowing Confederates to retain their political rights. On the ground in the South, networks that African Americans had developed in slavery and the war coalesced in the Republican Party, political leaders emerged who would shape local and national politics for a generation. Some, like Hiram Revels and Henry McNeil Turner, had been freeborn people of color, mulattoes, in the South who had received educations and found work as ministers in the North. Moving to Natchez, Mississippi, as a pastor, Revels quickly became alderman, state legislator, and U.S. senator, right? Free people of color, right? This is in Natchez, Mississippi, right? But they say it's racist, slavery busting down there. Not so true, because look what we got happening. Turner, who served as a chaplain for the U.S. colored troops during the war, worked as a Freedmen's Bureau agent before his election to the Georgia state legislature. Now, that one is a little iffy because we all know what they're responsible for, right? Many black political leaders were ex-slaves. However, along with Hiram Revels, the Natchez area produced the remarkable John R. Lynch, a former slave who in his very early 20s became a formidable political figure. First in town politics, then as Speaker of the State House of Representatives, then as U.S. Congressman. They talking about mixed race folks here. These are mixed race people, right? Children born to maybe a European and Indian woman. right? These free people of color. They know how to read. They know how to write. They're educated, smart, work, have wealth, most likely indentured servants. You see what I'm saying? Found work as ministers. Add the quotes on that. Gotta add the quotes on that. These people, right, they come from wealth already. And if they were slaves, they were most likely either indentured servants or family members of men who were mixing in with the native population. Right? Because these are the only possible outcomes when we talking about that stuff. They had these things passed to them, right? Passed down to them. The knowledge, the education, right? They weren't always folks who can't read and write and as dumb as people or as history may make it seem, right? That's not the entire truth. It's not true at all. Right? And it's so crazy because from what we come from, these type of people, because a lot of this is in our ancestry, you would have thought we were all really slaves because folks is dumb as fuck. Oh, excuse me. Dumb as hell now. Dumb as hell. Do you know who you are voting for? Right? Let's keep making note of that, right? Perhaps no one captured the dynamic transformation of African American politics more clearly than Robert Smalls. We learned about him. A slave pilot during the war, Smalls became famous for smuggling the boat Planter from Charleston Harbor to the U.S. Navy with his family and friends. After the war, Smalls used his bounty to purchase the Beaufort, South Carolina home where he lived as a slave. Right? He purchased his home where he lived as a slave, but the truth behind Robert Smalls is that his slave master was really family and the wealth was passed down to him. That's the truth behind that. Smalls quickly became a force in South Carolina politics, serving in the state constitutional convention initiated by military Reconstruction for the 5 terms in the U.S. Congress, and also in the influential appointed position of collector of customs. Right, Robert Smalls, another copper-colored brother in politics. Right? Famous figures such as these only begin to capture the political transformation that accompanied black men's enfranchisement in the South. Beneath them were hundreds of magistrates and sheriffs and judges, people who remade local politics by being accessible to previously excluded African Americans, right? Rebuilding the community. Project 2025 all over again, y'all. Reconstructing the community, right? And they all rested upon extraordinary and generally cohesive political organizations that mobilized enormous turnout of African Americans to the polls to vote for officials who would help protect their interests. Right? To vote for officials to help protect their interests. The same people who are helping them get this far, right? The Republican Party, so to say, right? The Republican Party, right? It's the same thing today, right? It's not that they say Trump is a racist, right? They throw all of this rhetoric out there, right? But he's provided the African American community so much help, right? To protect our interests, right? I have not seen not one Democrat or no Kamala or Biden do anything to help us, right? And then when we connect it to history, they have never done anything to help us. They have only done stuff to disenfranchise black people, right? We done seen that word about 7 times already, right? Look, black men held office in many different places across the South. But their numbers tended to be most concentrated in black majority areas where large-scale plantation agriculture was dominant. Ooh, big drop. What that mean? Right? They held offices where there was large-scale plantation agriculture. So what does this connect us to? Could this connect us back to the black people owning slaves theory? Right? Could it connect us to that? That's what it sounds like. I'm not gonna lie. But however, though, we where the largest plantations is at, so we know that's where the wealth is at. Right? That's where the wealth is at during this Reconstruction era. Although the rise in black office holding was momentous, almost nowhere did African Americans hold office in proportion to their number in the population. Nonetheless, as a result of widespread white sensitivity about any amount of black political power, a myth rose that this period was characterized by unjust Negro rule over whites. More propaganda. They don't get enough. They don't stop. Right? They cannot stop. Right? This is just what life is like living under the Democratic propaganda machine. Right? Let's continue though. Right? I've been a little bit too far. Although only men could vote, African Americans' political mobilizations depended in important ways on the actions of black women. Shout out to our black women, right? Like I said, right? They had the opportunity to vote, right? Give thanks to those who came before them. They gave the women the opportunity to vote, and the mobilization depended on the actions of the black woman. Right, African American women participated vocally and publicly at mass meetings and church governance and at election precincts. Right, shout out our black women, man. Among the most famous moments of participation were in conventions in Richmond, Virginia, where free women participated in African American meetings and called out to African American delegates in conventions, claiming that enfranchised black men represented the entire community. Right, that was the claim. They lobbied and cajoled, created community boycotts of black men who voted Democrat. Oh, big drop, right? Look at what you got going on during the Reconstruction era. They boycotting all of the black men who's voting Democrat. That's something we should do today. We should do that now. Boycott all of the black people that's voting Democrat. I'm pretty sure that'll be a damn good idea. That's how you cut the grass to see the snakes, man. You cut the grass to see the snakes. Boycott all of the black people who vote Democrat, right? And they press for broad-based reform. Both northern and southern whites were astounded by the roles that African American women played in mass meetings, right? That preceded constitutional conventions and at the polls. Although their participation in informal politics did not lead to formal political enfranchisement, it was a crucial part of the creation of new black politics. Shout out our black woman. We can't get it done without the men and women working together. Right? We cannot get it done without the men and women working together. What do they want in Project 2025? They want to promote stable and flourishing married families. We cannot get it done without the men and women. This is facts. This is facts. We see it. So like I said, if you against Project 2025, then you against men and women working together. You must be a part of these black Democrats who need to be boycotted. Right? We need to boycott you. That's the role. That's the vibe now. Right? Between 1867 and 1870, the governments established under universal manhood suffrage in the South changed politics dramatically. State governments created the South's first public education systems, modernized legal codes, and expanded tenants' rights. Black men held elected and appointed offices in many cities. Hey y'all, black folks responsible for education systems in the South. Big drop. Right? Big drop. Big drop. They held power, right? And municipal governments under Republican rule poured forward funds into infrastructure, often grading and paving streets for the first time and taking steps to alleviate public health concerns and crowding. Right? One thing I want to make mention of, Florida, a congested state, especially Miami. My boy Trump started constructing highways. And we had more highways being constructed over here in New York during his reign, man. I'm just being honest. So that's relieving congestion, because traffic get bad. That's relieving the crowding. paving the streets. We've been needing the streets in New York paved for years. Right? He came into office, streets started getting paved. They even paved the streets over here by my block while he was in office. Right? Funds into infrastructure and all of that stuff helps us develop as a society. You can't get to work on time if you late because of traffic. And then if your boss not hearing that, you're going to get fired. Right? This is all stuff that at the time it was being done by black people. Right? So Donald Trump is just picking up where these people left off. That's the facts. That's just the facts. In many places, state legislators and city councils, pressed by black activists, passed laws forbidding racial discrimination and public accommodations. But black suffrage in the South hung on a narrow thread of state constitutions and statutes, and black men still cannot vote in the states of the North and the West. After the November 1868 elections, Republicans grasped at what many thought was their final chance to change the Constitution. Ulysses S. Grant had prevailed in the 1868 presidential election, due in large part to black support from the South, right? Supporting Ulysses S. Grant, black folks, right? Another history drop right there, because they don't teach us much about Ulysses S. Grant. They talk more about Lincoln, but Grant was just as important. In fact, scholars estimate he lost among white voters nationwide. Meanwhile, Democrats regained seats in Congress in the lame duck session that followed the presidential election. Almost all Republicans recognized the importance of securing black men's voting rights by amending the Constitution, believing that the vote would be both recognize African American equality and provide a basis for self-protection. Check this out. Right, so they saying when the Democrats regained seats in Congress, the Republicans recognized the importance of securing black men's voting rights. Right, they recognized the importance, and they amended the Constitution. They believed that the black vote would recognize the equality and self-protection for black people. You know what that means for us to prosper? That's a lot, right? That's a huge statement in terms of prosperity for copper-colored people, because we wanted to protect ourselves, right? We wanted equality amongst ourselves and other people. We wanted to be treated the same. That's all of the things that we wanted, and we have folks like Grant and the Republicans advocating for that. So nothing changed. Yeah, he was rocking with us since the 80s. Everybody just became haters recently. All of that stuff is new. That hate they showing is all new. Why do I keep doing this? Right, we're going to go over a couple parts, and then we're going to start to conclude this bad boy. So let's check it out. What do we have? So, yeah, let's see. Where did I leave off at? Right, okay, so yeah. So, some New England Republicans favored literacy tests because they would help exclude Democratic learning Irish immigrants. Some Western Republicans feared that a broad amendment would enfranchise U.S.-born children of Chinese immigrants. Right? So, Republicans, right, and immigration is something that folks been against. They've been against that. They don't want these Democratic-leaning Irish immigrants in the country. Right? They don't want them. They want them to take literacy tests because it would help exclude them from voting. Right? They don't want Chinese immigrants in the country because they felt that they would be enfranchised, right, and become U.S. born children, natives of our country, even though Siberians been slaughtered. But the thing about it is that it takes over the majority population, and this is where you have this term minority. Like, this is where minority comes from, right? If we being technical, you get the term minority from stuff like that, right? But the goal for the Republicans, look, they favorite literacy tests, Right, in a wild scramble in the session's final days, the two houses passed different versions of the amendment, and a conference committee produced a narrow compromise instead of a positive right to vote. The 15th Amendment prohibited restrictions based only on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Right, these amendments, right, the 15th Amendment, it prohibited restrictions based on race or condition of servitude. Right, amendments serving in its truest purpose, helping black folks out. Literacy tests, property qualifications, and the exclusion of women, and even religious limitations all remain constitutional. Right, next part we're gonna check out, right, because it gets juicier. Right, some Republican politicians like Charles Sumner and anti-slavery activists like Wendell Phillips and Frederick Douglass, who had previously expressed sympathy for women's suffrage, insisted that adding women's suffrage would doom their efforts to make policy for the South. Many Republicans and Democrats opposed women's suffrage on the grounds that women's political views were already represented by their husbands or fathers, and that voting rights for women would tear families apart. This is big drop, because what is it saying? Well, just take a look at the direction that this country's been going in. Once they proposed the welfare system, it's like, not gonna say, a lot of folks got high off that stuff, and like I said, they love it, they live with it, right? And they cry independent. I am independent this, I am independent that, I do this, I do that, but you get help from the government, right? And this is what they mean by it tear families apart. It's not saying that women having rights would tear families apart. No, women's suffrage, right? Women's suffrage, because at the time, how are you a woman suffering when you have your family? That means the family is suffering. Right? You got to make these things make sense. Right? It would tear families apart. Well, look at what welfare did. It teared families apart. I've heard women today say stuff like, screw that dude, right? They don't need him. And then the very next day or next month, selling food stamps. Selling food stamps. Make it make sense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, right? But like I said, all of these things, right, are part of the Democratic propaganda machine. All of it. All of it. Check this out. Black men's enfranchisement also came under increasing attack between the 1870s and the turn of the century. In a sweeping campaign of violence and terror, paramilitary clubs, most famously the Ku Klux Klan, sought to intimidate African Americans from voting and to destroy political organizations. More KKK. Oh, KKK propaganda. Look, sis, that the young women today, they don't make them the same as my copper colored queens from the past, man. They don't make them the same. Anything that's 25 and under is toxic. 29 and under is toxic. 30 and under is toxic. That's just my take from what I see. From what I see, the feminism movement, toxic. And I love women dearly. I love my mother. Right? You gotta understand this stuff is destroying us. Right? It's destroying us. But yeah, look, the KKK in a sweeping campaign of violence and terror, they intimidated African Americans from voting, and they destroyed black political organizations in the 1870s. This is 30 years before the turn of the century, 30 years from 1900. So this stuff is fresh. It's recent. It's recent. We are still living under it. Right? We are still living under it. By carrying out high-profile assassinations, terrorist organizations attempted to nullify black men's right to vote. These included the killing of U.S. Congressman James Hine, Constitutional Convention delegates like Benjamin F. Randolph of South Carolina, legislators such as State Senator John Stevens, and town officials like Wyatt Outlaw of Graham, North Carolina, and many other assaults on ordinary African American women and men and their white allies. So they were bodying white people too. Remember, KKK, a democratic organization. Most famously, in the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, Congress authorized the presidents to declare counties in a state of insurrection, suspended the privilege of the writ of the habeas corpus, and used the military to arrest and hold vigilantes and terrorists for trial in federal court. With these tools, the U.S. government arrested hundreds of Klansmen in South Carolina and defeated the Klan there. Klan defeated in 1871. Right, but look what the Democrats did. Democrats in Congress passed what became known as the Posse Comitatus Act, which attempted to limit the Army's ability to intervene to protect voters. Right, the Democrats passed an act which limited the Army's ability to protect the voters. Destroying us, sabotaging us, straight up. Straight up. Look, in creating such measures, southern states drew upon tools crafted to diminish immigrant voting in northeastern states. Yet Southerners acted in much more sweeping and effective fashion and would drive away far more voters, pushing away immigrants. Like, all of this stuff is all too similar. All too similar. Look, a new wave of anti-democratic efforts spread across the South, beginning in Mississippi in 1890. Southern states launched plans to legally disenfranchise African Americans. They passed a broad array of laws meant to limit black voting, including literacy tests, complex registration requirements, and poll taxes. And they expanded the number of felonies that carried disenfranchisement as a penalty. Such measures were purposely worded in race-neutral language that avoided the 15th Amendment's prohibition on race-based disenfranchisement. Going crazy, y'all. Going crazy, man. I'm telling you. Do you know who you are voting for? Please, 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 please. Yes, they did. That's what they did. That's what they did. That's what they did. They paid the KKK. That is a government-funded organization. This is why I keep telling people, please, 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 pay attention to who you are voting for. Do the research. There's no way one person, can go through the Project 2025 documents, not all of it, but 2 parts, 2 chapters, and find 6 things that stand out that I already advocate for. Yet, however, TikTok is telling you that it's bad and you should not vote for it because it's going to destroy you and whatnot. Like, oh my gosh. Put a sock in it. Please put a sock in it. We are tired of you lames and you followers and you people who are so misinformed misleading us. We've been misled for so long. I can't even watch basketball no more because LeBron James is gonna mislead us. He's gonna mislead you during the season, during the playoffs, and even when it comes to giving us advice. Right? Misleading. Right? Charlemagne the God, misleading. Right? BET, misleading. Will Smith and Jada Pickett, misleading. I can continue. Chris Rock, misleading. Baddies, misleading. All of that stuff, misleading. False information. Do the research. Today we learned the connection between Planned Parenthood, eugenics, right? A social experiment conducted on black people, right? The connection to Kamala Harris, her support for it, and how California, how Planned Parenthood is in support of child marriages in California right now as we speak. And then we connect all of that stuff to the Reconstruction era. Project 2025 is an attempt to reconstruct American politics. Please go and vote. I appreciate you, sis. Always showing love. Definitely, we're going to tap in and definitely get this podcast out the way. Got to get you on that interview. And I appreciate those who tuned in on Facebook too. Y'all show some love. Right, y'all got to bring all this stuff to YouTube, man. Bring it to YouTube. I'm trying to get these numbers up, right? TikTok, I got a good way to go. Got a good way to go before we can start going live on TikTok. But we getting it there. We getting it there. Right? Follow on TikTok, Copper Colored King. Subscribe to all my YouTube channels, Morals and Money platform for creators, Copper Colored King on YouTube. If you enjoyed this one, man, leave a comment. Right? Like I said, pay attention, man. Just pay attention. Because we are exactly 3 months away. We are 3 months away from possibly the biggest election in American history. Possibly. In our era. Right? Because our parents seen more. They could tell us some stories, some stuff, and we'll be like, wow. You know? If they were paying attention. So yeah, we leave it there. I appreciate those who tuned in. Much love to the Copper Color community. I just wanted to really touch bases on this one. Definitely because see, they throwing a lot of dirt on my boy. Like when the media start doing stuff like that, I just gotta step in, right? I gotta step in. Like, nah, y'all not gonna do this. Y'all is not gonna do this, right? Y'all not gonna do this without telling the truth, right? Without telling the truth. Let's be honest. Let's be honest, right? No more lies. Love y'all. Thank y'all for tuning in. Stay tuned for the next one. Let's get it.